A staple of every Ninjago season and also LEGO set wave is the vehicles. The ninja often get new wheels to accompany them in their new missions. But a question has often been the case when it does come to a lot of Ninjago fans, which is, how do the ninja actually afford all of those vehicles? As far as they're aware, they don't really get on so much in terms of their day-to-day. They simply accomplish their missions, defeat the villains, and that is about it. So how are they able to afford such high-tech machinery? So that is going to be what we explore today. This is going to be my theory on how the ninja got their hands on all of the vehicles from their own respective seasons, and try and figure out the origins of them respectively, because some of them are fairly easy to explain away, while others are really not, but I do think there's a vague bit of implication as to where they truly do come from. To start off with the pilots themselves, we have only actually seen a couple of vehicles from those few episodes. We saw a boat, we saw the gliders, and we also saw a pulley that the ninja used to carry Wu, and I do think all of them are fairly easy to explain away. The boat and the pulley system was actually from Wu. They appear to be his vehicles, and that seems fairly obvious to explain away. And also is the glider. They are Jay's design, so they're versions that Jay actually curated himself, and he made those from his own scrapyard. So it's fairly safe to assume that all of those are fairly simple and easy to tuck away. Season 1 introduced us to a handful of vehicles. For one, you had the Spinjitzu vehicles curated from the golden weapons. So those are by elemental divinity essentially. So those ones don't need any sort of origin. The Destiny's Bounty was seemingly cobbled together from things that were on the ship itself and also just some general scrap metal. It doesn't seem to be that they did much in the way of going out and procuring new parts. There was no scene of them going out and having to do so, they did all of it in-house. So it makes sense to believe that the bounty basically just came from itself. The Samurai X mech was also made seemingly from Nia and also just from the remnants of what they had from 4 weapons. The implication from the 2011 mini-movies is that she was developing the suit itself before the events of Season 1, so it seems to be that that is where that aspect came from as well. And then finally you have the Ultrasonic Raider, which came from, again, elemental divinity. You will note that it came from the Tornado of Creation when they were in the junkyard, so again, there's no reason to believe that any of those vehicles have any form of mysterious origin. So Season 1 as well is tucked away quite nicely. Season 2 for the most part had the exact same vehicles apart from the instance of Kai's mech and Cole's Earth Driller, and both of those as well have some fairly comfortable origins. They were made from scrap metal and other little pieces that they scavenged on the Dark Island. There's no other way to suggest that they would have been able to get their hands on them, so again it feels fairly safe to assume that those have solid origins. Season 3 again for the most part is explained away. The ninja's main vehicles all came from the Technoblades or from the Borg array of robots. They were not made specifically for the ninja, they simply commandeered them. And also Lloyd's bike was by elemental power. It's a spawn of the golden abilities, and that is where that bike also did come from. The only aspect of Season 3 that isn't explained away is actually the case of the vehicle that Nia has that is used by Lloyd and Garmadon to get away from the city. It is a part of the Samurai X arsenal, and I do think falls under the category of earlier Nia vehicles that were completely funded by herself. We had confirmation in Season 2 that Nia had some form of mechanic job. She was doing something on the side when she wasn't doing Samurai X related things, and that is seemingly where she got the money to get any sort of vehicle that she needed, and I believe that is the origin of this vehicle itself. There's no implication that that vehicle was a recent build of hers, was something that she had for a long time. It just simply seems to be another thing that was within her array, but I believe it was completely self-funded by her because we know for a fact that she had some form of income. So that is Season 3 knocked off, but we go into Season 4, and again, for the most part, most of the vehicles are actually safe to assume. Anything that the ninja basically used was coming from Chen, or more specifically his island, whether it was scavenged parts like the Rotojet, or it was Jay's mech, because that was simply just given to him by Chen. So all of those are explained away just by the fact that it was from him. But there are 2 vehicles that we need to consider. That being the newly refurbished Destiny's Bounty and also the DBX. They're 2 fairly large vehicles and definitely would have been quite expensive to get a hold of because of the technology that was in them. So again, we need to figure out, vaguely speaking, where these actually did come from. But I actually have a general idea as to where they did. I believe that these 2 vehicles were actually funded by Cyrus Borg. I believe that for the most part, they were given by him as a gift for everything that they did within Season 3, and there's a little bit of implication behind how I know that, so I'm gonna go through it very quickly. The first reason why I believe this is actually down to the fact that the technological advances in these vehicles are quite high. There's holographic technology, the bounty is made of nice new technology screens, there's a lot of really good stuff in there that definitely would have come from Borg himself. I do believe he would have had a part in it just simply due to that alone. And I also do think it comes from the fact that, for one, Borg was very grateful for what the Ninja did, yes, but also it does show that Borg was much closer with the Ninja at the beginning of Season 4. He was there when Lloyd was training, he was helping in the training when it does come to him. And I do believe it does imply that there was a much closer dynamic by that point in time. And I do believe a part of that would have come from the idea that Borg would have helped refurbish or give new vehicles that the Ninja could do in future missions. I do personally really like this idea, and I do think it actually rears its head again later down the line, but for the most part, it does seem to be that every once in a while, Borg does like to help in terms of curating new vehicles. I do believe he does fund certain ones of them, but also he does just create other ones, which leads us into Season 5. In Season 5, we outright get told how the vehicles get funded. We know that Cole's bike, Zane's mech, and also Jay's new car are completely funded by the fact that Wu sold off his tea business, and then Borg makes the vehicles accordingly. So we know that Borg is also inclined to help, but he doesn't seem to help all the time. It may seem like a contradiction, but it does also seemingly make sense, because we do note that Borg seems to give Ninja certain gifts after he does get help from them, and again, that will come up later. But Wu is the sole funder of the Season 5 vehicles, and I actually will argue that going into Season 6 and also Season 7, we actually do get to see that again, because we do know that Wu's paying, but we also know the vehicles were meant to be coming after that fact as well. Borg regards the fact that he actually was meant to build something for Kai, but he just simply didn't actually have the time. It wasn't a lack of funds by any account, he just didn't have enough time because of the other ones. So we can square off the Season 5 vehicles, like I said, and the Season 6 bikes that we actually get to see that Kai and Nia use, I do believe is also from Borg or Wu's funding. It makes sense that Wu would just continue to fund these new vehicles in accordance with when the Ninja would actually need them. So that squares off essentially what we see in Season 6. I am going to slot in here when it does come to Day of the Departed that these were the most difficult ones to determine, but I actually do think this is still funded by Wu. The Stealth Raider, the Rock Rotor, and also Zane's Tumbler, I do believe is still a product of Wu's money. Now, you may be thinking that this is stretching extremely thin, but the thing is that remember that Wu was the owner of a fair bit of land. Now, I'm not saying that we actually have an understanding on Ninjago's economy, but I am also stating that Wu definitely wasn't poor in that moment. So I do believe these vehicles were also the product of Wu's funding, but these are the most loose ones of the bunch when it does come to the entirety of this video. And like I said, Season 7 as well, because the main thing was definitely Destiny's Shadow. It seems to be that that was also an aspect of Wu. That seems to be the final aspect that Wu actually did fund, because it's technically meant to be a Lloyd vehicle. It was made by Misako, but also it is intended for her son. So it means that Wu funded a vehicle for each of the ninja, maintaining the balance like he always does. There was one more thing from Season 7, which was Pixel's new Samurai X car, but again, it seems to be that that was part of the Samurai X arsenal, so that would have been funded by Nia as well. So that squares off everything from the first 7 seasons. So let's go from there and explain how the further ones were actually done. The Season 8 vehicles are going to fall into what I said in accordance with Cyrus Borg. Cyrus Borg seems to gift the ninja vehicles when the ninja actually save him. Again, like I said, he was saved in Season 3, so Season 4 vehicles were funded by him, and he was saved in Season 7, so the Season 8 vehicles were also funded by him. This is the car that we see from Lloyd and the newly refurbed Destiny's Bounty. I again believe that this is a case of Cyrus Borg giving the ninja these gifts in accordance with the fact that his life was saved. The other one was Zane's bike, but we actually get to see that being constructed aboard the Destiny's Bounty. So again, it seems to be that that bike was curated from spare parts that we've seen before. But with that, Season 8 is clear, and Season 9 doesn't fall into this video at all because of the nature of the season. There were no new vehicles that we need to consider that would have had any sort of particular origin. Yes, the tank, but again, we know where that actually came from. But it brings us into Season 10, where we get the newly refurbed Destiny's Bounty, the identical one that we actually again have an answer for. That Destiny's Bounty was purely produced by the city. It was a gift to the ninja after saving Ninjago City. And again, I actually do think this this is going to have a knock-on effect down the line. But that's the only vehicle we necessarily need to talk about. There were other ones such as the Earth Driller being an aspect, but I honestly think that one to an extent comes down to the fact that it probably was still laying about after the events of Season 2. So it's a lot of different things to consider there. We know that the Ninja do retain vehicles, so maybe they just simply brought back the Earth Driller just so Cole could have a new vehicle. But that brings us into the 11-minute era. This brings us into a new age when it does come to Ninja vehicles, because I believe this is the beginning of the Ninja actually being funded by the city itself. By this point in time, the Ninja have done more than enough in terms of actually helping the city, and I do believe they respond in like. I don't think it's something that's necessarily been stated, but I actually think there's evidence to suggest that this is the case. I believe the season 11, 12, 13, 14 and Island vehicles were all produced by the city's funding. I believe the city fund the Ninja so they can actually save them time and time again. They know they're going to get their money back because the Ninja do always save them. And you may be wondering, why am I cutting it off at Seabound in this regard? Well, that's because it coincides with the evidence that I do actually have. But any vehicle from the 11-minute era that I've specified so far, I do believe was funded by the city. The reason the crystallized vehicles aren't is because we actually do get some implication as to what happened. Obviously at the start of crystallized, the new Ninja have replaced the Ninja team, and they are outfitted with a lot of new equipment and gear and tools, and I do think that makes sense and actually coincides with the city theory. What also coincides with this theory is the fact that the Ninja, instead of making new vehicles and having new equipment because they're clearly trying to get back in the game, we actually get to see Cole and Zane repairing old vehicles. It's almost like they lost their funding from the city to be able to get new stuff. I really like this idea and it does make a lot of sense to me. What does then follow that is of course the vehicles that the Ninja use after the fact. The ones with the good cloaking and with the power-up effects that we do see for the latter half of the season. And I actually think again this is a case of them actually being refunded by Borg. Where they lost city funding, I believe Cyrus Borg would have stepped in to help the Ninja where he could. And again this is demonstrated in the fact that they are highly technological vehicles, coinciding with every other vehicle that we know Cyrus Borg actually had influence in. And I can't lie, all of these just simply make sense. I do believe that's a fairly cohesive look when it does come to all of the Ninja vehicles. As for Dragon's Rising, every single vehicle that we've seen, we actually get told where it is, or we basically understand where it does come from. For example, we know that the Temple Bounty does come from Roby because of the events of Season 2. But beyond that, I do think for the most part those vehicles are created by Sora. Sora can very easily make vehicles in accordance with her elemental power. So I do believe any vehicle that we see within Dragon's Rising is actually coming from her, and that is what I believe is the timeline in terms of Ninja vehicles. And I would love to know what you think of this idea and this timeline of events. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are there any vehicles that you think don't work in regard to this idea? I would love to know your thoughts on it because I do think this is fairly cohesive at that. But like I said, I would love to know your opinion on it because I'm always open to other interpretations because I do find that to be very interesting to read through. But thank you very much for watching the video and I do hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please consider subscribing. I love discussing Ninjago with more people, and if you do want to support the channel any further, which you do not have to, you could become a channel member and join the legends on screen. Thank you to each and every single one of you for supporting me. Honestly, your support does mean the world to me. But like I said, that is about it for today, and take care. Okay,